Welcome back. This is lesson number 3 in this cube series. It's actually lesson number 4 in total. But we're going to continue on and finish up with this cube inside a cube, this impossible object that we are making. And if you are coming back to Fusion 360 after a break, just make sure you open it up on the side panel here, the hide data panel, or the show data panel, this 9 cubed icon. Open it up and it should be under your tutorial. If you're unsure where it is, if you come to here for some reason, you can just go to my first project or somewhere else if it's listed as something else. But it should be really just a basic thing with this 3-pronged triangle. And it's under the tutorial. You could have named it something else, but that's fine. Open it up, double click or right click and hit open if you want, if you have a right click. So here we go. So again, just if I hold shift and the middle mouse button just to rotate around, just practice that for a second because it's really handy. Hold the middle mouse button by itself and you can drag the entire canvas around. The object stays where it is, but the canvas moves. And then if I hold shift and I click the middle mouse button, it'll add a green dot. So obviously this is a different rotation now. It rotates around the center, near the center. But either way, I'm using the shift and middle mouse button to rotate around. So we have this cube from last time. And this cube we actually copied this large cube and we dragged it over to the side and then we scaled it down using our scale tool here, which is also in the modify menu down here. And then we brought it back in after scaling it to the right size we wanted. We also made a third version of it where we closed off these center circles, these center cylinders, and we closed the entire cube, made it a solid object. We could have just made a new cube, but I wanted you to practice how to actually close things and to get rid of objects or get rid of different processes. The other way that I did not mention, which on purpose because it would have added a bit more confusion to the whole system. Learning a new program is hard, especially when it has a lot of complicated tools and options and different functions that really affect each other in different ways. So down here on the actual bottom panel you have the history list, and this list shows us all the moves we've made. If we've gone back with our undo or Command or Control Z with Mac or Windows, then this actually brings the list back and it cancels out the previous one. But I can actually go back. If you watch, I can go back and I can go back, let's say to here. What happens is it goes back to what was happening at that point before that move. So right here we have our cube, which it looks like this thing is not cut out by a square yet. So you can see if I drag this forward one, what does it say? Copy paste, then moved it over. So I copied and pasted this one cube inside, then I scaled it, scaled this cube larger. You can see every single move we made. Close that circle, close that circle, close that. And then I think there was an issue last time where I just added a new cube and joined them together with the joining function. And then I moved it back to the middle, and then I did the combine, right here, combine, and I combined it with the larger cube to remove that difference. And what happened was, if you can't really see it very well because of the cylinders affecting it, but let's say I, just for reference, if I don't watch what I'm doing right now, I'm going to cut the cube in half just to show you that this is, my computer's running a bit slow right now for some reason. So this, I can't move the offset plane. Anyways, so let's cut it in half and let's just cancel that. I'm just going to make a brand new cube. So it's 50 by 50, so I'm going to cut this cube in half, and you're going to see what I mean by we had actually it's 100 by 100, 500, 50 by 50. So I'll just don't copy me right now, I'm just showing you just what happened, what we did. We made 3 cubes, and when one was removed from the other one, so we use that cube as a cut function. And what happened was, look, you see this gap here, this inside shape of a cube is now separated from the center cube. And what this is going to be doing is it's adding a buffer zone so that if you want to print this object, it will be a cube inside a cube that this thing can move if you print it properly, but you can't remove it from the actual outside cube because it's one solid object. And you cannot make these things in a CNC machine or with other processes. Only 3D printing can do this, which is a really big benefit of that type of creation. So I'm going to go back to where I was, so where we just started. So here I'm going to do some things you don't have to do for a 3D printer. So we're going to make 2 different versions, but first I want to show you something called components. And components are an important part of Fusion360 because we've been working with bodies so far. If you notice, we have all the bodies, which are the cube, the inside cube, our main outside cube, and then our scale cube, which I actually kept here, our scaling cube. And why did I call it a scale cube? Because we used the corner reference as the center for the scaling point. Because Fusion, for some reason, it doesn't actually let you select the center of an object. I wish it did. Maybe it will in the future. This program is always growing and changing. They're adjusting things as the user base tries to ask for things and wants changes. And it always ends up happening in the end at some point, but it just takes time. So that's one good thing about this program is you can actually communicate with the developers with Autodesk, and they will hopefully implement what you are asking for if it's viable. So here we go. We are going to first, so I want you to select your body priority. If it's not in the list here, it will be under select and selection priority, body selection. So we're selecting the entire body. There's also face and edge selection and another one as well. We're not going to use that. We're going to select both cubes. So you can either select it there or you can also select it in the menu by holding shift, and you can select everything you want in the bodies menu. But we are going to first make this into a actual component. So select both cubes because we want this to be one solid component. And I don't mean solid as in the solid object. I mean all the parts of this sort of grouping of cubes is under one folder. Think of it as folders. Think of it as just a title. Think of it as anything you want, but a component is a different sort of process that Fusion likes to use, and it's a really important process because later on components will help you work with other projects at the same time. And I won't even explain why I said that, but you'll know later on. So when you right click, a menu pops up. So right click anywhere on the screen, doesn't matter where because we have our body selected. Go down the list and here you'll see create components from bodies. Now one important thing is before you do this, make sure, you don't have to, but make sure your bodies are named. Cube 1 and Cube 2. That's what I call them. You can call them Bob and Ann if you want. You can call them whatever you want. But just make sure that they're named because this will help you find them in the future if you get a lot of different bodies and components happening in one sort of document, one Fusion document. So I'm going to click this Create Components, and what it's going to do is it's going to remove them from the bodies list. And now I have them in the main list. So if I close the bodies folder, this main list under the entire document, they are there. And what it's done is inside this is parts that you don't have to deal with right now, the origins, as well as all the bodies in each component. So now we have 2 separate components in that. And what this means is when I open a new document, I'm going to save it right now. Select all. When I open a new document, I can actually bring this cube or these both cubes in, and it won't, if I change them here in this original file, it will also change them in any other file I drag them into. So let's say you create, for example, a circuit board, and you want to use that circuit board in some kind of project, and you redraw the circuit board in Fusion so you have references and sizes and all the different parts you need so you know that your object that's, let's say, a box for your circuit board is not going to interact with. It's going to be a nicely fitted, well-designed box. Well, if I want to, let's say, change a part in the circuit board, I can go back into the original circuit board file where I got it from and change it, and then in my new box file it will change that circuit board component automatically. So it sort of links it together. Bodies don't do this. Bodies are, think of bodies as more of a temporary thing. There's more things about components that are really important, but that's just the first little reference I'll give you. But for us, we're going to make this into one component. And how do we do that? Well, I want to keep cube 2 as the main component. And I'm going to call it my impossible cube. And what I did was I just selected, made sure it's the right one, not the middle cube, which is this one. It kind of hovers over it, or it underlines it if you select it on the window. But your large cube, the main cube that we want, I'm going to call it impossible cube because we have a cube inside a cube. So call it that. And look, underneath the bodies is still called cube 2. So now my component, the whole component, is called impossible cube, but the actual larger cube is called cube 2 still. So here we go. Now I'm going to open up, and you should do the same thing, open up your cube 1 component folder, go to bodies, and cube 1 is still there. Select it, it highlights it, you're there. And then I want you to drag, so hold the left mouse button, click it, and drag it down till you highlight the bodies folder in the impossible cube, right below it. What this is going to do is now my cube 1 has nothing inside it. If I select it, nothing happens. If I select impossible cube, it selects both. If I select individual parts, it selects each individual cube. So now the impossible cube, the whole object, has multiple bodies. This is important that we do this because if I want to do some kind of interaction, let's say an assembly, which is up here, where maybe this has a hinge attached to it, well, I can now move that hinge and the proper bodies attached to that hinge will move, but the other parts won't, even though it's still inside a multiple bodied component. So this makes another layer of complexion if you, complexion, why did I even use that word? Complexity if you want to actually do something. So that's it. That is the big lesson for today. But we're going to do some more after this. You can keep watching if you want, or you can just participate and do it to yourself on your own file. So right now you have this impossible cube, and you can actually, as a component, you can actually export it into an STL format, which is what 3D printers read. So if you know what a 3D printer is, or if you use one or have access to one, you'll use what's called a slicing program. And the slicing program will take whatever object you have, and for us it's this, and it will slice it into little layers back and forth, and then it will build it up in the program when you send that data to the 3D printer, which basically just sends coordinates, like GPS coordinates. And the printer just follows those coordinates and adds plastic or adds whatever material you're using to build the object. Now, what's important is right here, this middle cube is hovering in the air. Right? It's kind of hovering in them with nothing connecting it to the ground. If the ground is this plane here, the bottom area here, this middle cube has no attachment to the ground. So you can't print in midair, so a slicing program for 3D printers will add what's called supports. Well, it will add little, whatever design it is, whether it's squares, circles, or sort of a fan-looking layer. It will add those to help support and build it up until it hits the bottom of this, and then it will print the normal parts of it in the middle of the cube, the center cube. But we're going to add our own supports today, and this is an optional thing. So let's do something right now. Let's take the component, let's select it, and I want you to copy it. You can right-click, go down to copy, or you can just hit Command or Control-C. I got a nice little warning there for some reason. Copy. Now, so click somewhere else, so unhighlight it or just hit Escape to remove your highlight. So again, just hit Escape. Now if you right click again somewhere else, it will give you a few options for pasting. Paste and Paste New. Now what's the difference here? And this is a really important difference. Paste will paste a copy of this cube we just copied, a brand new one, but it will be linked to the original. Meaning if I change the original, it will change the copies. If I paste a new one, then it will not have that link. This is hugely important. And a lot of people struggle with this. And this is something that I actually did not know at the very beginning of using Fusion. And it caused many, many complications when I designed some other things that I was using it for. So paste new is what we're going to be using. We want to paste a brand new object. Because if we change the cube, it will affect the original. So we don't want that. We want to paste new. Because the default Control V or Command V is to actually paste a copy with attachments, with any kind of linkage between them. So here we go. We have a new one. I'm going to move it 200 paces over, 200 pixels over, millimeters over, sorry, not pixels. Hit OK. So now I have two components. I have two separate components. The original cube component, I can actually delete it if you want. I'm going to right click on the old cube one. I'm going to hit delete or just hit remove. Remove is a better option because if you ever want to go back, you can always go back. So watch this. Down the menu here on the bottom, the history, it's gone right now in the menu. There's no cube one. I go back to here and it comes back. So that's a nice thing to have. You can also right click and hit delete, which deletes this actual action down at the bottom. It doesn't delete the cube one that was there. It deletes the action of removing it. So remove is a nice way to sort of keep it in reference, but not have it disappear. So again, for some reason they didn't, I didn't move them. So here we go. Click your cube one with a brackets one, hit M, move it over on the X. See the X over here? Move it over 200 millimeters. Hit enter and it will move it. Now, if I hit press pull and I change the original one, let's say I drag this wall out, it will not affect that one, which is nice. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to get rid of that, go back. So now I have two copies. I'm going to call this one or dash or original or OG. Oh, OG, because if you know anything about social media, you'll know what that means. Original, and I'm going to call this supported, and you'll see why in a second I call it supported. So now I have the original, no supports, and the new one with supports. They're both the same right now. Let's add some supports. So first, we don't need to support this large cube. We need to support this one. And this is if you have a slicer that for some reason doesn't create supports, or it creates supports you don't like. So first I'm going to take this middle cube, I'm going to move it out. So do the same thing. Let's say move it out 100, see what happens. That's far enough, good. 100 millimeters on the X, moving it out. You can go any other direction you want, X or Y. Z will not work the same way. So now I need to create supports where this bottom layer has some kind of fill from the ground up until it hits this so the printer can actually print this bottom layer. Otherwise it's printing in midair and it just makes a mess. So let's make our own supports. And the common support is actually making sort of little towers, tiny towers. So first we're going to go to a sketch. And I'll create a sketch, or you can just hit the rectangle part, but create a sketch. Look at the bottom here. Yeah, capture position, that's fine. So now we're at the bottom. Now I'm going to create a 2-point rectangle. And let's see how big we get. 5 by 5. Let's go 3 by 3. 3 by 3 from the very corner. So again, just escape for a second. Just to reiterate, I went to the corner of cube. You can go to any corner you want. I'm going to pick the top left corner. Click it, drag it out, and then I'm going to hit 3, hit tab, 3, or just go to the other one, 3, 3, enter by 3, and now I have, if I zoom in, a little square 3 by 3. So now I'm going to exit my sketch. I'm going to kind of angle it a bit, but now we're going to hit the press pull. You can hit extrude if you want as well. Let's try extrude. Under Create, go to Extrude, hit E for the shortcut. If it's not in your top menu, you can add it with those three dots or the little up arrow windows, I think it is. Extrude, and we need to bring this down to the exact position where the bottom of the larger cube is, because that's where the ground will be on the 3D printer. So I'm going to bring it down, and I don't know how far it is exactly. I can measure it from here to here, but right now let's go over New Body. But another trick is to actually just click how far you want it to go. I'm going to click the bottom of the actual large cube, and then the Extrude option readjusts to that point, which is 25 millimeters. So that once that's set, we're at 25. I want you to hit the New Body on the operations, not join, not cut, not intersect, not new component, just New Body. Hit OK, and we're set. So now we have a sort of towered support on one part of this cube. We're going to add more, and I'll show you a trick to make it really fast in a second. But right now I'm going to think about 3D printing, because if you know anything about it, you know that this distance here, which is pretty much 0, if I measure it, it's 0 to 0. It's really, really close together. There's no distance. We actually have to remove this. So now I'm going to click my new tower. I'm going to hit M to move, and then down on one of the arrows, there's a whole bunch of arrows and options that pops up. Get the arrow that's pointing up the tower, the vertical axis, the Z axis. Click that arrow. We're going to move down, hit -0.2. Why 0.2? Because 0.2 is a very common sizing or height sizing in 3D printing, where a layer is 0.2 millimeters tall. 0.2. In that way, this will have enough separation so that when we print it, hit enter then, or hit OK, enough separation so that when we print it, it will not stick to the bottom here. It will kind of snap off a bit. That's really, really helpful. So since we moved it down 0.2, we now know the entire thing is down 0.2 millimeters past the bottom. So I'm going to hit the press pull button, which is Q for short, under Modify. Go to the bottom of our tower. I'm going to it's 25, so I want this to be -0.2. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking differently. -0.2 will be 24.8. 2024.8. For some reason, make sure on the right here, offset face is 24.8. There we go. So now, if I just hit the inspect, click the bottom of our tower, click the bottom of our main cube on the left over here. Distance should be 0, because they are 0. If I put a flat bar across connecting them, it would be 0 distance between the flat bar and the bottom of each. If I click the edges, just to show you, it will show me the distance between those edges. But I want the distance between where this bottom is and where this bottom is. So make sure you click the bottoms, not the edges. So that's where that is. Okay, so now I have the perfect tower, which is connected to the bottom, same distance. Let's make more. This is a fun thing to do. First, I want you to go to the where is it? Create. Not a web. Where was it? Okay, so under Create, I'm used to having these things in my main menu up here, so I'm trying to work from the beginning where you'd be. So here we go. Under Create, go down to Pattern. It's right below the pipe and coil. Above Mirror, Pattern. And this is a fun one because there's 3 options. Mostly you will use the first 2 options. We'll use the second option next time, but we're going to use the rectangular pattern first. So let's bring that up to our toolbar, pin a toolbar. Or you can just click it if you want. Under Pattern, click the rectangle pattern. So now it brings up this new box where it shows Pattern, and we want to pattern a body. We don't want to pattern a face, we want to pattern a body. So we're patterning this tower, this support tower. We're going to pattern it across one axis and across the other to make a large, equally distanced number of these towers, as many as we need. So first, select the object. So go down the list. Objects, we want the tower. The direction, we're going to select the edge of our box. So if I select, you can't select the circle, this is the rectangular pattern. The circle pattern will do the circle. So we want one of the edges of the boxes. I'm going to select this edge, the closest to me. This is the x-axis, I think. And we have another one we can do in a minute, but we're going to select that. We're going to go across and just drag the arrow. And look what happens. I get these shadows popping up. These shadows are more instances of this distance. So here we go, 47. And I don't know how far that is exactly. So let's actually go, I'm going to go back for a second just to help you out. I'm going to find out where this edge is, how far away it is from this edge. 47. It's exactly 47 because I want the new ones, a copy of this edge to be aligned parallel with this edge. So again, pattern, we want bodies, and then select that. Direction, there we go. So back where we are. Let's go back, let's go all the way over. I did it first anyways. It's hard to see when you zoom in or out. Sometimes it disappears. But you can kind of see the shadows. It's lined up exactly to 47. Good. Now I don't want 3 of these. I need more. So we're under quantity. I'm going to add 4. So I'm going to keep clicking until I get the amount I need. I think 10 would be good. Okay. Now I have one direction. You can stay with one direction, not the band, and you can copy all these and pattern it all the way down here as well. Or you can use the other function, which is the opposite axis. And let's drag the other arrow. It's sitting back here at the original one. This is the y-axis. I'm going to drag, and it also has 3. And we're going to go, I know it's 47 because it's a cube, so let's go 47. And now I can see if I move around here that it's pretty close to the edge. If it's not, that's fine, we can fix it later. So I'm going to go also to 10. So now I have a perfectly spaced pattern of our towers. Just hit OK. Might take a second because there's a lot of them. And it will create new copies of that. Look how many bodies we have. We have all these individual bodies in our list, all those bodies. So that's it. I'm going to put all these bodies in my list, scroll all the way down. There's 104 of them. I'm going to make them scroll up into a folder. You can do this. This is another little trick here. So select them, right click, move to a group. Oh, sorry, I missed something. Right click on bodies, the folder itself, hit new group, hit the group title. You can keep it as group 1. I'm going to put, my caps lock is on, support towers. Okay, go to my body, scroll all the way down, and we have all of them. You can drag this up as well. Go drag it into our support towers, and now if I click support towers, the folder, it clicks them all, which is really handy. Or I can just individually click them by opening the folder. So now I can select them all. There's something else called selection sets, which we are not going to touch on right now. So here we go. I have the towers now. Now, what we're going to do is take these, and we are going to select the towers, and select, hold shift and select the cube. Hit M. Oh, that's fine. I'll move them over. So select the cube, move it over 100, at negative 100, back into the center. Select the towers, hit M. Oh, come on. All right, so here we go. Here's where we get to have some fun. I don't know why it's not letting me do this. I select the towers, hit M, and it won't select them all. Let's do this. I'm going to hit M for move, and you can select each tower individually, or just drag your mouse into a box around all of them. make sure you're not going to box around your cubes. So you have to be able to see just the towers. And it will select them all. Has to think for a minute because my computer is actually not the newest thing in the world. Here we go. So X, move it over 100. So now I have all of these inside of this. All right, here's a little bit of a tediousness, and there's other ways to do it. We don't have to do what we're going to do next the same way, but I want you to do this because it's nice to have just the experience of doing these actions. So we are going to have to get rid of some of these towers, but we don't want to get rid of all of them because in the same way that you might think by just deleting them, because that one tower I selected, I just use that as reference, is inside the bottom of the large cube, but it's not because it's at the top here. It's also part of supports. So what we're going to do is do a few different things. And this is sort of a removal process to make the perfect distance. So remember that we had the 0.2 distance here. And again, if you're thinking, why are we doing this if the slicer does this automatically by itself? Well, it's nice to know, one, how 3D printing works, because a lot of people that use Fusion will be using 3D printing. It's also nice to know how to do these different processes in Fusion. This is a good way to practice it. Making your own supports and seeing how it works, because it also gets your head wrapped around 3D printing and your object itself. Because designing objects is not easy, and it's not easy to make them work, let alone complicated objects with multiple parts inside each other that all 3D print at once. That is very difficult to do. So here we go. We are going to first remove these towers, but just the part that's attached to the big cube. So first I want to select these 4 cubes, these 5 cubes I think, 6 cubes, hit the combine option. It's going to be a bit more tedious than I thought. So here we go. Hit combine. You're going to select the large cube. You're going to hit the Keep Tools button. Oh, sorry. I'm in my mind. I'm going backwards. Hit combine. Select the. Well, let me do it. There we go. Select one of the outside cubes that looks like it's kind of inside the body. Select the large cube, hit Keep Tools, and go to Cut. So again, select the tower first. I said cube, I think, by accident. Select the tower first, that's inside the large cube, one of the many. Select the large cube second for tool bodies, and then hit Cut. Make sure it's cut, not join. Hit Keep Tools, and hit OK. Do that again with another one. And now it's, by default, it's set to cut and keep tools. You don't have to select it again. So it remembers what you did, which is really nice. I'm going to go through and just select all of these. For some reason, I can't remember if there's another way to make the selection go fast. There probably is, but even still, I've been using this program for a number of years, and there's still things that I learn. There's still things that changes, so new options come up. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that any cube that's attached to the large cube, any tower that's attached to the large cube, is being cut out, which is a lot. This takes a few minutes, so you can go through and do this. You can speed up to the next part of the video that does the next section. In the meantime, you should do this and I'll do this because it's good practice. It's nice just to know that you can sort of see it and get the handle of selecting different things. If you were doing any kind of CAD drawing where you have training in actual CAD design on programs like AutoCAD or anything else, then you might be doing it a different way, which is good. It's nice to know that way too. That's usually the professional way of doing it. If you're watching this video, my guess is you're probably not a trained professional. So I'm trying to show you some things that you might not learn elsewhere. Because some people seem to go very complicated routes, thinking that everybody just wants to learn the absolute hardcore professional way of doing things, when it's not always the best option for everybody. If you really get into this program or getting into 3D design, then yeah, you will learn it. By default, you will come across it and you will have to learn it at some point, because as you get more complicated with your designs, it's really handy to know these things. But for the case now, let's just do it the semi-professional or the amateur way, because it gives you lots of practice. I'm just making sure, because you can see that there are some little parts. It'll zoom in here. Some little parts that are still attached. Just make sure you get all the way around each of the towers that have any access. Oh, that's kind of useless there, but oh well. I hit enter from now on, instead of having to bring my mouse over all the way. So my guess is some people in the comments will probably get mad at me for doing this, but that's fine. I've been teaching professionally long enough to know that there's a reason why you teach things a certain way and do things another way. So, okay, here we go. So I have now removed the parts of the towers that are touching this large cube. That's important. Now we get to the fun stuff. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit escape just for safety here a few times, because what if something is clicked and I don't know and I don't want to move anything. Select your large cube, move it out of the way. I'm going to go minus, let's go 100. And now you can see that I have sort of these cutouts where the originals were cut and changed. We're going to do a few more steps here, because this gap between the small cube and the towers is 0.2 millimeters. I want all the gaps between all these towers and everything to be 0.2 millimeters. I want them to be removable. I want the printer to be able to print on top of them without issue, but also easily snap them off and clean them up when you want. So here we go. This is where we get a bit more fun. You are going to create a center diameter circle. You're going to click the bottom of the large cube. You're going to find the center. Now this is where it will default, it will snap to the middle. A circle will appear. If you see a square, it's not the center. A circle will appear, a blue circle, in the middle of whatever cylinder or circle you're attaching it to. Click that circle, drag out until it connects to the outer circumference of that circle. And it should say 50 millimeters. We don't want 50, we want 49.8, because that is 50 minus 0.2. 49.8. Hit enter. It locks that in, so you can actually move it around if you need to for whatever reason. But the sizing, the diameter is locked in. Hit enter again. It creates our circle. Next, I want you to exit, stop the sketch on the top right. So we can move around. Hit Q or extrude if you want. E for extrude, Q for press pull. Click your new circle, and we're going to bring it up until the top of the inner cutout cube, the inner cutout part of our large cube. Now, not just there, because we have minus 20. We want actually minus 20.2, just a little bit further. And that's good. Okay. So here we go. Here's the next fun part. We're going to create a new rectangle. We're going to go, so sketch, rectangle, 2-point rectangle, or it's already in your top menu if you followed all the instructions from previous videos. Click the middle of the large cube, the bottom layer, the one where a new cylinder is attached to, or sort of around. The camera will change automatically. You can actually change it back. I'm going to change it so I can see inside through one of the holes. So now go to the edge, and I want you to drag, rotate your camera with your shift and middle mouse button. This is a handy thing. Don't use the left mouse button. And make sure your square, you're dragging it from one corner to another, the opposite corner. Not the adjacent corner. You want the opposite corner to make the full size square. There we go. So now I have a square that is the exact size because I dragged it to the snap points in the corners of my inner cutout cube. Hit Q or stop. Actually, if I cancel it, stop the sketch if you want as well. Hit Q. Now select it, and what's going to happen is it will select it all except for what this middle cylinder has. I'm going to go up just 0.2, and it says join. I don't want join. I want a new body. A new body. This is not going to be part of the large cube. A new body. Okay? So there we go. So now I have these sort of offset parts, which is perfect for the whatever it is. Good. Okay. Next part, last thing that we haven't done yet. This is where it gets interesting. Hit your circle again. I want you to hit the bottom of the large cube again, the same place we did before for that other cylinder. Go to the center and draw all the way to the edge, 50 millimeters. Hit enter. Hit enter again. Now here's where you get to practice your zoom in and your other sort of fine tuning. And you're going to use one new thing. If I hold shift and command, no, it's not that. What is it? If I hold control and shift while I drag the middle mouse button, this is a new movement command. This is fine tune zoom. So the middle mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out, right? I'm doing it right now. If I hold command, shift, and drag my middle mouse button up and down with the mouse, so my mouse is moving up and down. I'm physically pushing my mouse. This little up and down arrow pops up. Now I can actually move very finely. And look how close I can go. It will cancel out. I'll go inside the cube at some point. But you can go very, very close to things because the middle mouse zoom doesn't always get you close enough sometimes. If you have very small objects or very small sized things you're designing, this is handy. Control, shift, and the middle mouse wheel. Hold it down, that button that it clicks into, and then drag your entire mouse up and down. Left and right does nothing. Up and down. All right, here we go. So I had the middle cylinder already made, and we have a new diagram. It selected the whole thing for some reason. Where am I? Anyways, let's go up, and it will go to cut automatically. I want new body. Drag it up, or drag it down until you can select the other cylinder, or select the square part, the new square you made. This is the 0.2 millimeters, so minus 20.2 millimeters is the size you want, new body. So now, when you hit OK or Enter, you're going to have two cylinders in the same place, same size, just that diameter is 2.2 millimeters apart. Now, here's where we are going to subtract something. Hit the combine. Make sure you're not selecting the inside one. You select, so if you zoom in far enough, I'm going to show you again, just for safety here. My bottom of the large cube, zoom in to the edge of that cylinder. You see there's a few different lines here. I'm going to select the middle one, the larger 50 millimeter diameter cylinder. Under Combine, Tools is going to be the inside cylinder. Cut. I don't want to keep tools. I want to get rid of this middle part. So get rid of that. Uncheck it. Hit OK. Now I have this very, very thin 0.2 millimeter. I measure it. Minimum distance 0.1. Shouldn't be that. Should be 0.2. Oh, that's radius. Sorry. Radius, so it is 0.2, because the measurement tool seems to do radiuses and not diameters all the time. So there we go. Now it's set. Okay, next, let's just for fun, select your inside new square, the bottom layer. Select your very thin layer cylinder. Join them together. Select them both. Make sure your large cube is not selected. Join them. When I click them, they will be one object, one body. So here we go. What this has done is made a cutout for our towers. If I drag it over, or just type in move, right, that new cutout, -100, it is going to cut all of the cylinders with this cutout. Really, really handy. So here we go. Target body. We can go through each one. This is tedious. I have to find another way to do this. I haven't done this in such a long time. Okay, so we are going to go combine, select the cutout part, make sure it's on cut, make sure keep tool is there because we want to keep it. We don't want this cutout thing to disappear. I'm going to go through each tool bodies. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going the opposite way. The target body is each little square, each tower, and the tool is the cutout. Make sure it's on cut, keep tools, and now it is set. That's one thing we can do there. Really, really handy. Okay, so here's I'll give you another option too that I can think of right now. You can go through each one first and do this if you want, just to practice. Cut, okay, combined, and you notice how they disappear. The ones that are cut don't show up throughout it. Like you don't get these lines happening because those lines mean this one is exactly the same diameter, the outside edge, as the circle, so it kind of shows through it. So when you do that, it disappears. So now it's gone. So now that's how I know they're all done. You only have to do the outside layers. So if I do all the outside ones that are touching it, that have these little lines through them, then I know I'm done. So do that. The other option is to do this. Here's another trick. Move your thing away. Let's go -100. So now I'm going to select Q, which is the press pull. I'm going to select one of the bottoms. I'm going to hit 0 just to make sure. Why? Because it won't let me select something else as easily if I don't hit 0. I'm telling it that I don't want it to do anything right now. 0 means do nothing. Let me do something else before you do your little action. Go through and just select the bottoms of all, I've done that one already, of all the different faces. Not the circle part, this cylinder part, but it's the bottoms. We're almost done here. It's kind of lagging a bit. Hopefully the video is not doing that. I don't want to do this again. That's for sure. I'm going to zoom out a bit. So almost done. I'm just selecting all of these bottoms here. Let me zoom in. the last few. It shouldn't take you too long. It should take you maybe 30 seconds to select them all. Whoop. Okay. So we're at 0. Let's go to minus 0.2. What we're doing is we're subtracting 0.2 millimeters from these, which is the same size as this thickness here of our new cutout. So that's it. Now watch this. If I hit OK, so all these you made it to 0. Set the distance to 0. That way you can select them all. If you select one and another that's a different point, then it might change it. You just hit. All right. So I think we have this pretty much done. My recording, if you see some glitches in the recording, it's just because the recording kind of canceled out because of an error that happened. So I'm just kind of jumping between different videos here. So let's check this. Here we go. Click my little odd creation here, and it should, if I bring it back over 100, perfect. So now let's do this. I'm going to hit combine, hit that, cut, done. So it kind of showed me some lines there because it's really close, but if I zoom out, it's there. But if I zoom in, they're gone. If that happens, just try. Some people actually do this. If they think that they know how to print their object better than a slicing can default set supports at, set the supports into whatever structure it is. Like it builds its own supports. That's good. I'm going to save this whole thing just for safety because I don't trust the program sometimes. If it gets too complicated with all these different things, it might crash. So there you go. That is it. There's another way to do it with intersections and things like this, where you don't have to actually use your rectangular pattern tool. But either way, you have learned so far, just to recap quickly, within 30 seconds, you've learned about components, click an object, or multiple objects that you want to be one, sort of one thing, one file folder, or one, I say objects, click multiple bodies to become one object. That's a better way of saying it. So create components is right there, and components are a key thing. You want to use components in the end. You don't want to have a list of a million different bodies. You want to actually have components. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to remove it. And now that is there. So I'm going to select this. I'm actually going to take, watch this. I'm going to open up my bodies folder here, my support towers. I'm going to drag that bodies into the bodies of the bottom impossible cube. So again, I have all these individual bodies which are in the support towers folder that we made. I'm going to select the support towers folder. I'm going to drag them into the bodies of my impossible cube supported. It might take a second. And now what I have is I have all of these support towers bodies inside the component folder with the impossible cube. So now if I select the impossible cube, if I hit escape, just to show you, it selects everything. So now watch this, right click, export or save as STL. If you click this and you tell it where to save, it will save all of these things as one solid, not a solid object, but one object in an STL format, which is what 3D printers read, slicing programs read, which means you don't have to drag each and every tower in there, each and every object. You can save this very complicated object or multiple objects as one STL file, which is brilliant. This is one of the key things that makes Fusion very, very good for this kind of work, is that you can take these very complicated designs and make them into one actual object. All right, so that's it. That was a long one. I'm sorry for the length. I had a bit of a droning on for a while there. But the biggest thing to remember is components, and you also learned about the rectangular pattern. You learned about, I clicked the wrong button there, sorry. You learned about a few other things that we will go back to later on, but now you should have components. Just make sure you save it. I'm on version 8 coming up, version 7 currently. That's it. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time. The next time we're actually going to be doing a different thing. I might add one more video to this later on, depending on what I think we should add to it. But for right now, you have technically an impossible object. You can save this one as an STL and create your own supports in your slicer as well. Right-click, Save STL. So try that. If you have a 3D printer, try printing this. You can scale it down as well. But try printing it and see what happens. And I will do the same thing, and maybe I'll show you with an attached video later on. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time.